Adrian, how's it going?
It's going well.
We are live.
We are live.
Yes, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, I think we had I briefly met you through Phil.
Phil and Jessica.
Yeah, and we had some conversations. And last time I met you, you were selling high-end luxury suits.
Yeah, custom clothing for busy professionals.
Yeah. So you always were very clean cut, and I kind of admired that.
Yeah.
And then I just recently found out through Facebook that you got into counseling.
Coaching.
Coaching.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just coaches are very careful to tread the line of like therapists. So
Okay.
definitely coaching, not in the line of therapy though.
Yeah. Hey, well, tell me more about that. Like, what was that pivot in your life that goes, hey, you know what, I want to change my career path and go on to coaching?
Yeah, well, I mean, all I had to do was lose my job at the time during the pandemic.
Oh, shit.
I got laid off, and I'd had my own coach for years. I'd looked into coaching for years, probably since 2015. And, I had a lot of free time, and so I thought, well, this is the time to sign up for the coursework that I had previously just sort of looked into but hadn't gone all in on.
Uh-huh.
And it's actually why I got away from the suit business I got into recruiting, and I thought it was kind of a good segue as I worked towards coaching. So when I got laid off, I had all the free time, invested in my coursework through the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, or IPEC as it's called.
Okay.
And yeah, that's what I did for several months during the beginning of the pandemic, was just studied my coursework and worked on becoming a coach.
Nice. So you had a coach, and tell me how that greatly has benefited you.
I had a sales coach first.
Okay.
So, a lot of people in sales will get coaches, and it never really resonated with me the way it did when I later got a life coach. It was a good friend of mine who was going through his own training. And he's like, hey, I need to get some experience as a coach. Can I coach you for a while just to get some hours? And I was like, no problem. And I've had a coach ever since then, a trained life coach. And so that's what got me interested. Actually, when I became a coach, I thought maybe I'll coach salespeople, I'll coach recruiters. But that fizzled out very quickly. It didn't really work for me. It reminded me too much of kind of why I got away from those things. And so, yeah, I've had my own coach, and I think to your comment there, I think, we don't do it alone. So we all have support one way or another. And for me, coaching had always played a big role in my growth. So
I've never, you tell somebody, go see a counselor or go see a therapist. I never hear that word coach thrown around.
Yeah, well, there's not as much evidence to support it.
Yeah.
There's hundreds of years of work in psychology and therapy. Coaching really, it's pretty nuanced. I would probably say coaching the way that I'm trained anyways is probably 20, 25 years tops. And so I think a lot of people would say that. I never really heard of a leadership or a life coach or something like that. Maybe business coach, maybe sales coach. And that's where you're serving in more of an advisory capacity. You're giving advice and insights and mentorship, but the way that I was trained as a coach is a bit different than that.
How were you trained?
So
different.
It's interesting because I tell people you can't really explain coaching, you have to experience it. But I'll do my best.
Okay, no worries. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so as a trained trained life coach, but my specialty is leadership and success coaching now, which is just a different form of life coaching. The person across from me, let's say if I'm coaching you, I'm not the expert. I don't have the answers at all. You do. So you're the expert of your life. You have all the answers. It is 100% your agenda the entire conversation. And so the look on your face would tell me that that seems a little different than what most of us expect, right, from coaching. So, and of course, in the sports world, right, I'm the coach, I'm the authority figure, here's the plan, do the plan, right? So it is different. And so it doesn't ever surprise me when people say, well, that sounds like maybe not what I'm used to, or maybe that version of coaching seems a little different, because it is.
Yeah. How can someone benefit from taking on a life coach? And when does someone realize, like in your experience with with the people that you're coaching, like what's that moment in their life where they go, hey, I need a life coach? Like, how does that even, like, maybe someone, basically my question is this, maybe someone's watching this and they don't even know that they need a life coach. So what are some signs that, hey, you may want to consider?
Well, I'll say this. All good coaches that I network with and that were part of the program most all of us will do some free coaching, because I really do think they could watch this podcast or they could listen. Or I used to do some live streams and some videos, and I still do. But ultimately, a good professional coach should offer some free coaching. And once you experience it, then you can decide if this is something I want to move forward and pay for.
Yeah.
But getting there, right? So when do you know? And I would say, I guess it's certainly not a punishment. So if it's recommended that you look into therapy or coaching, I think everybody could benefit from a therapist or a coach. And again, we do different things.
Yeah.
Similar but different.
I like where you're taking this, because it's like, it's almost like, well, why do you have to wait till you're mentally?
There's something wrong with me, right?
Yeah.
I need help.
But this should be something that's just innately in someone's routine. Like, hey, yeah,
I got a coach.
Nice.
You've got business advisors, you've got partners, at work or as an entrepreneur, a CPA, accountant, attorney, right? Like I think it's one of those professional services that should be in there.
Yeah.
Should be mixed in with that Rolodex of other professionals. But I think everybody could benefit from coaching. You could be super successful, which most of the people I coach would probably say they're successful. They're leaders, they're executives, they're driven professionals. But also the, high school kids and college students, which, I've coached some in that demographic as well. Everyone could benefit from coaching.
Wow.
And I'm incredibly biased towards that opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody can benefit. Is it always financial? Like, hey, I'm poor, I want to be rich.
Yeah.
Is that like a big pie? Like, if you had a pie of like, okay, these are kind of like the intentions of this individual going into coaching.
Yeah.
Is majority of them just like financially driven?
Well, I'll say this, that the biggest benefit people get in coaching is not one that they realize at the beginning, right? So it's something much more tangible. I want to get that job. I want to change careers. I want to make more money. Relationship coach, help me find the perfect partner for me. So it is very tangible. So I would say people often show up to coaching expecting to get what they want, but the coach knows that, that's top of funnel. Yeah. What's at the very bottom of the funnel, what's at the very precipice there, is there something they're not addressing that only a trained professional can help them access. So our frame of reference is always going to be what's native to us. The bank account's low, I need more money.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like my job, I want a new job. But rarely are you going to think, I think I need a shift in my perspective. I think I need to experience life through a different lens, right? That's what the coach can help provide, but that's never, like, people rarely get into a coaching conversation expecting that.
No. Because maybe, so the person has to be somewhat self-aware that they need coaching? Yeah. Or is it like they rub shoulders with you and then, you kind of like go, hey, you can be at this level instead of this level?
I would just say to you, Hari, I would say, hey, I know you're very ambitious. Yeah. And what I've seen in the people who I coach is the most ambitious people tend to be, they tend to be the most self-conscious. They tend to be insecure at times.
Oh, absolutely.
I have it or I don't, and that keeps me driven, right, to get more. They also tend to be the most burned out, anxious, and overwhelmed people. And
You're
so
funny.
The pursuit of...
Cut.
Yeah, we're too deep here.
We're too deep.
Yeah. So, but that's exactly the reason I got coaching, right? I was down and out. Everything I thought would lead me to success didn't work out for me. I was out on my ass, pardon my language.
Yeah, no worries. I
was out on my ass, unemployed. And I had my own coach, and I had been interested in coaching for a long time. It's like, okay, well, this life formula wasn't clearly sustainable. So once I studied coaching and I realized the actual benefits are not realized right away, and they're certainly not something somebody would come to you for. Once those things hit home for me, like my life just completely transformed. It was actually amazing. I went from unemployed to full-time coaching, purchased a house, which was not on the radar. Like I got a new car, like all the results, like tangible stuff that people think, but like through transforming my life in 4 to 6 months, all this other stuff that I honestly didn't even really goal set for just started happening in my life. And so when my typical program is 6 months, and that's usually 12. I'll do some one-off coaching, but mostly it's a 12 or 24 session program over 6 months.
Why does it stop?
Why does
Why does the coaching stop at like a certain package? Can someone go past 24 months?
They can, but here's what I'll say. I think a good coach could help somebody develop the tools so that they won't probably experience the same level of transformation, but they'll have some sustainable habits and some tools that they could take with them. I mean, this is going to be like an assumption or judgment about other coaches, but if your people need you, they need you in their life all of the time. I don't know. That's not necessarily what I want.
Yeah, you kind of want them to graduate.
I want them to graduate. Maybe go 6 months or a year and circle back. Maybe if it's not working for you. But push you away from the nest. Try this on your own for a while. New way of thinking.
It's kind of hard for someone you've changed their life.
I know.
You know what I mean?
You want more of it. I want to continue. But most people that I've coached, it's 6 months. 6 months. I did 3. I did a couple sessions here and there, but I really found that like over the course of 6 months, that's a really good sweet spot to see major changes.
Wow. Is there any lost causes that you ever come up with?
I fire people. I've let go of clients for sure. So now what I do at the beginning, I used to offer, like I go out there on my live streams, or I would post content on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Which we'll post in our description below.
Right, and you'll have all my info. And I would just offer a free coaching session. And that wasn't working for a while. I would have people who just kind of didn't get it in one coaching session. So I went back to the drawing board, rebranded, sort of refocused on the leadership and success side, and started offering these like open sort of AMA, Ask Me Anything conversations with people. And then we determine if they're ready for coaching. And we just say, well, Hari, it sounds like you'd be willing to keep an open mind, allow yourself to be challenged, and you'll do the work. So let's try a coaching session and see if that will be helpful for you.
You say work.
It's work.
It's work.
It's work.
So it's not just like
self-transformation. It's major work.
It's not like just listening and absorbing. You're implying that the individual will have to like, give me an example of what kind of work someone has to do.
Right. So
a little taste.
Yeah, a little taste. Because your point was,
like with a therapist, you go to a therapist, you sit down in a chair and you guys talk. Maybe she gives you some homework, but maybe that's like mental homework. Like think about this, or what's like when I think of work, I think of like actually lifting something. Or you actually having them write down or.
It could be anything. So at the conclusion of a coaching session, I'm about to give away some secrets. At the conclusion of a coaching session, like I use the analogy of a funnel because somebody always sits down with this grand idea of what they want to accomplish in a coaching session.
True.
And through the process of exploration, we actually sort of whittle it down until we get to the bottom of the upside down pyramid. And then it's really just one thing. It really just ends up being one thing. And at the end of a conversation, at the conclusion of whatever they've explored, how does that make you feel? What are you thinking? What do you where was your thinking? Where's it at now? All that stuff. We explore all this through a lot of open-ended questions. And then I ask them, okay, well, what are you learning? What have you learned through exploring all this? And oftentimes you'll get people who just sort of pause and they go, I don't think I should be dating that girl anymore. Or
wow.
I think I should leave my job. Or, I realize that my anger gets the best of me, and that's why my friends don't hang out with me anymore. I don't know. It could be a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I said, okay.
So they realize a singular thing that's so important
That's
that
the crux of all this other stuff they thought they kind of needed, or they wanted. And then they realize it's right there, the needle in the haystack. We cleared out the hay and we found the needle. And then, but they have to come to that on their own. I can't say, hey, you've been being an ass and you should stop that. That's not coaching.
Yeah.
So it's all them. It's all their idea. And you know the concept of, is it cognitive dissonance?
Okay.
Where you are presented with new information that runs counter to your prior belief system. And you sort of freeze in a moment and go, dang, I've got to change something. I never realized it this way.
And if they didn't have you, right?
It's very hard to get there on your own.
Well, it might have taken them their whole life.
Yeah.
Maybe never.
Yeah. I mean, you can raise your self-awareness on your own over years, decades. But to experience it with that professional guidance, you really can only get there with professional help.
Yeah.
Like, instead of years, get there in 3-4 sessions, right? Mm-hmm. So when people get there and they have that just light bulb moment, that's when you ask them, what's next? And then whatever comes from that, it's so funny because you'd think they'd be like, they talk about a major goal, or they're like, I have to go, I have to write that book, I have to get a new, and it's so funny. You ask them what's next and they'll go, I think I just need to talk to them. I think I just need to write it down. I think I just need to put it in my calendar. And it's so, this big thing they think they had to do, they have cleared out all this noise and they've gotten down to this like singular point of like, the next step is literally touch this microphone. I mean, it's like so literally right in front of them that it is impossible for them to fail.
Did they start laughing and realizing wow, I've been my biggest critic this entire time, or my biggest obstacle?
I've been thinking it's this big, crazy thing that the world's against me and my boss hates me, but really, I'm getting in my own way. And I can control that. I can't control my boss or others. Mm-hmm. So then we go through just basically a SMART goal exercise from there. Say, okay, then what's the smallest step? How you want to measure it. How achievable is it? Realistic? It's stuff we learn in Business 101,
Yeah, for sure.
And that's typically how we conclude a session. So when we talk about those next steps, they end up committing to something really, really, really simple. And then, of course, we check in throughout the week, or maybe we meet the next week and we revisit what they committed to the prior week at the end of that session. We revisit that at the beginning of the next session. And then what happens over time, and I was just listening to Atomic Habits by James Clear. He talks about identity being the most important part. And they realize it's really you focusing on you and being yourself more often in more places ends up being the greatest indicator of success. At least sustainable success that doesn't stress you out. And that takes time. That takes those 6 months. It takes 12, 24 sessions.
Sounds like it takes imagination. Yeah.
So going back to the beginning, I like to have just initial conversation with people. Yeah. And if they can grasp this, if they can commit to doing the work, and that's what I'm talking about, like that thing that you said you were going to do next. Mm-hmm. Did you do that thing? All right. Not the heavy lifting, so to speak, but like just the simple thing. Like, can you commit to doing the simple thing more than thinking it has to be a bunch of huge steps? And most people think it has to be a bunch of huge steps.
Yeah.
But it ends up being, what is the thing that I can do next that will actually like resonate with me, energize me, bring me some joy, that I can say, yeah, I can absolutely do this. Do that thing. And then over time, the 1% sort of thing every day, etc. Over time, they'll have one session where like now everything has changed. And then that explosive growth kind of sits on the other side of that. But that takes time. It takes somebody who's ready for the work. You have to have an open mind. I challenge people a lot because, that growth doesn't happen doing things and thinking about things the way we always have. The growth happens when we're challenged over the way we've thought or the way we've done things. Mm-hmm. And so that's not the right fit for everybody.
Yeah.
And I'm totally okay with that. But if they do make it to a complimentary coaching session or two, I still am completely unattached to whether they start paying me or not. Because the worst case is they're going to learn about themselves, they're going to learn about my approach, mm-hmm. and even if they don't sign up for a 6-month program, they'll tell somebody the next time somebody's really struggling, or somebody needs help, or somebody's version of success is just burning them out.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of just a little sneak peek into the process.
So how's this career change for you? Change your view on humanity?
Oh, I would like to say I'm less judgmental and I'm more open-minded, but that's one thing that I think most coaches will struggle with is you have to remember that people have their own answers within them, and that just because I am a good coach, I'm a good facilitator of these hard conversations and I can help people, that doesn't mean I'm here to give you advice and tell you how to run your life. I think that's probably biting my tongue is probably the hardest thing, because I can help this person, but if they're not, let's do a coaching session, that's where I can actually help them. But I just have to be very careful not to fall into the advice trap, thinking I know how they should run their life.
Yeah.
It's double-edged sword.
Yeah, it's totally counteractive of what I thought, most people just want, it's like getting the answers from somebody is like the easy pill.
It is. And if you think about it, a business advisor or a coach who that's kind of how they run their coaching business, mm-hmm. You're talking about why do they quit after 6 months? I want them to. But if they depend on me for advice, insight, and guidance, they probably want to have me around forever.
Yeah.
And I can get a steady paycheck that way. But I'm not at all interested in that.
Yeah. That's almost, that's very authentic. That's how a relationship kind of should be in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah, you have a partner, you're married, you have friends who are married with kids, all the advice in the world, and still your spouse has to come to that realization of something when they're ready, right? And mm-hmm. You'll be like, didn't we just talk about this? And I recommended this thing to you, and then a month later they're like, you know what really just hit home today? But when we're ready for that message to sit in, and so I cut out all the advice and we just go right to focusing on you getting there yourself sooner than, your husband, your partner, your parents, your boss giving you advice for months and months and months and months and months, and finally one insight hits, right? I can help people access that on their own much more quickly mm-hmm. and much more sustainably than if it were just all about advice, which is the easy way to go for sure.
Well, isn't it? There's so much advice out there.
Yes. Books on Amazon for $10, $20, Audibles, thousands of podcasts, right?
Yeah.
Advice is everywhere.
I think there's 1 million podcasts now.
It's
something crazy like that. Yeah.
And we're still doing them. And I think everybody should still participate in and listen to podcasts. I think it's great to have that information out there. But at the end of the day, we will do what we feel suits us best when we are ready for a new insight, new information, new way of doing things. It's got to be up to us. So
you're just planting the seeds, or not even planting the seeds?
Not really. No, even if I did offer, I'll offer an insight.
Okay.
I'll say, hey, I noticed something. All right, can I share it with you? And even then, I don't want you to feel like I'm coaching you.
No, you can coach me.
But it's I notice it seems like you work a lot, but you're not as happy as you could be. Now, I could be wrong, but I just want to know, when I say that, what comes to mind for you?
Well, okay. We had a record-breaking year in 2020. the end of 2020, and I was depressed. I was making more money than I've ever made.
Yeah. So on paper, right, already successful.
Yeah.
Successful business, successful partnership. And I don't know if you still do stuff with Phil, but like, that's a perfect example, right? Like, I'm unattached to how you're going to respond to that. And if we go back to that and I make that observation and you find it offensive or out of place, I also have to detach from that response as well. And the healthy detachment from how you respond, should I ever offer a thought or an insight, that's also something that a trained coach works really hard on, is that whether you received what I just said and interpreted it one way or no way, that's not up to me. It's still up to you I provide a prompt is all, right? And then you decide on how you're interpreting that.
Wow. I think people are leaning on, maybe they're not technically labeling themselves as a life coach, but they're leaning on a toxic relationship and getting information. And it's just because I can see how you have to be trained to really detach, but most people really don't detach. Well, whether it's like you see your friend, you're like, oh, I want to talk to my friend.
I don't. And
you know what I mean?
I'll admit to you, in a normal conversation, if I put on my coach cap and we have a confidential coaching session, aces all the way, I can do that, no issue. But interacting with my spouse, just like today, and she says something that I get miffed by, and I'm like, why would you say that? It's like, I can, I'm telling you, I could totally step into that space as a coach, but all this stuff that I coach around, I still struggle with. Coaching it is who I am. I do see things differently, but it's definitely different than a regular conversation.
Okay.
In which I'm still fighting with all these things I coach people around. I'm actually okay that I haven't had this figured out yet, because I want to show people the difference between a regular conversation and a coaching conversation. I want them to experience that difference, and it is different. And when they do, they'll decide if they want more of that, or if they're just not ready. It's we got a little too deep there.
Yeah.
We need to get some space, or maybe find another avenue. But I even struggle with this stuff day to day.
Do your wife ever have you put that cap on?
No,
kind of cross that bridge.
Never. I've coached a lot of friends, but I have never. I've never coached my wife, but I have used some exercises or some methodologies to assist her. But I'll say, hey, I've got a coaching perspective on this. Can we walk through it? But if I were to say, a common coaching question is, Hardy, when you think about that thing, what's coming up for you? And that's usually an opportunity for you to examine your thoughts or your feelings or whatever. If I were to just out of nowhere ask my wife what's coming up for you, she would slap me, don't do that, So there's a time and a place for it, and I think the coaching conversation is sacred, and I'm glad that it's a completely different conversation.
Wow. I'm kind of blown away right now, and I'm also intrigued as well too, because I have a personal trainer. I have someone advisors that I lean on when it comes to finance.
As you should.
And then it's like, oh, I think there's, I don't know, where people lie
but
with
they're also hard. They're probably not advertising life transformation.
Yeah.
The way they're approaching it, I'm sure, is within the scope and realm of what they're capable of doing. But you did say something a few minutes ago. There are some coaches out there who are wielding the term and probably doing more harm than good. For example, I was in sales for 15 years. Well, now I'm a sales coach. Right?
Yeah.
Now I can go tell people how to sell. So the average Joe doesn't know, what makes that difference than a life coach.
Yeah.
And a sales coach, I got lots of friends who are sales coaches. they can advertise this system or this thing will do this for you. And they've got all the evidence and stuff to support it. And so it works within the realm that they operate, right? But for the type of coaching I do, which is essentially life transformation level coaching, like making more money isn't going to transform your life. Like you just mentioned in 2020, right?
Yeah.
More money, house, kid, whatever, I should be happier. I should feel more successful. But that's when people come to me, that's typically how they feel. Mm-hmm. I've got all these things. I got the title, the job, the investments, the income. I'm stressed out, man. I don't even know I don't even know where to go next. How come I can't be happy with enough, you know? And so those are the people who work really well with me because they've already sort of achieved things. They've already set goals and hit them, but there's something that just they know there's something more or there's something they're missing, but of course left to their own devices, they're having a really hard time putting their finger on it. And those are the people who I coach, and which I actually love because you get to the next step stage of a coaching conversation, they're ready to go, man. They're ready. I can take next steps, I'll crush it, but they're also simultaneously surprised that it does turn out to be just a tiny little next step, right? Don't go start that business. Send the email, write the note, put the thing in the calendar, go for a walk. Ends up being where we get to at the end of a coaching conversation. So on the one hand, the driven professional who does get stressed out by more success is ideal. But even then, they got to get really comfortable with that atomic habit, that atomic level, granular little habit that they can start developing and accept that this is the path forward, the current path where it's yielding me a lot of things. It's really not helping me feed my soul, feed my identity.
I just quickly imagine I just so much advice, we're going back to the advice, I scroll on Instagram and I just see all these inspirational quotes and I like it for and it means something for me for about a minute. Maybe I save it, but does it really change my life?
Yeah.
Even though I see TikTok, the truth.
Man, you go on TikTok, experts, there are millions of experts on TikTok.
But they're not taking the one-on-one time with the individual, which is, you see what I'm saying? You're different. You're taking you are putting your energy in and precious time into this other individual. And that's the difference. Is that's a spark or whatever you want to call it, rather than just the quick thrills of just getting a financial quote or a...
Yeah. I can actually provide you a very tangible example of this if you're okay.
Oh, please.
So I had a couple of paid clients when I was wrapping up my coaching program because, we got so many good tools to use that I didn't want to wait until I had my certificate from my program. I just wanted to start coaching people. And I actually got a job as a career coach for a coding boot camp called Flatiron School. And so all of these people who I was coaching, you walk them through resume reviews, LinkedIn, brand presence, finding, what type of job they wanted. But it's funny how easy that was to help them with. It was so easy for me. And I was one of the few, well, I can't speak for everyone, but I very quickly realized I need to do some actual coaching, kind of the style that I think is going to work. And we would get through these tick the boxes sort of things of your job search. And all these professionals were getting skilled in software engineering or cybersecurity or other disciplines, and then going off and hopping into these new industries and these new positions, totally brand new, like teachers, people who worked at restaurants, artists. They're completely changing. And I realized that the tick the box stuff, the advice stuff is really easy. So I tried to put as little emphasis on that as possible. And what I started doing is coaching them through engaging with people online and getting people to the point where they could agree to a conversation with them and having face-to-face conversations with professionals who worked at those companies, who were doing the job that they wanted, not necessarily recruiters, but more like the professionals who are doing the job. And it was amazing when I started focusing on that, how quickly people started getting hired. And I realized I've got a gift. I could coach people through, like, the easy stuff is all this tick the box, get your job search ready stuff. That's so easy. The hard part is this person doesn't believe they can do this next job. They've never done it, right? They've never done it. They got new training. They're basically just they're fresh out of college, coming out there with no experience, so to speak. And so when I started helping them facilitate conversations and coaching them through, well, you know, just like I would coach in a typical coaching session now, that's when, you know, I just saw incredible results. And we never focused on getting a job. We never focused on getting interviews. We focused on the lead measure or the activity and coaching them through those steps so that they could be prepared to have conversations with people that the people they were talking to would never forget.
You said a term that I don't know. Lead measure?
So they're lead measure and lag measure. So a lag measure is like an end result.
Okay. A
lead measure is an activity that ultimately leads to a lag measure.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So that's what we worked on. I created a formula, a success formula, like a system. And then I just coached them week to week on how those conversations were going, you know, what was coming up for them in those conversations, what are they scared of, you know, what maybe are they not addressing that they should. And when I just got to coaching them through having quality conversations with other professionals, it almost, all the job search prep we get told about didn't even matter. The like prepping for interviews and looking up companies and, you know, the perfect one-pager resume. It didn't even matter. In some cases, actually in 75% of the cases when I was a career coach, I don't do that any longer. Just I've changed my niche, I guess.
Okay.
75% of the time they would get a job offer without having filled out a job application.
Wow.
And I helped over 60 professionals who had never done the job that they were about to go do get, you know, probably on average 70, 80K salaries, but many of them six-figure salaries. And I don't think it had anything to do with the job search technique. You know, I don't think it had anything to do with ticking the boxes on getting your job search stuff in order or applications.
Why the pivot? Successful career coach. Why did you pivot?
It didn't pay very well. Like,
okay.
And people too from career coaching, they tend to move on once they get a job.
Oh, okay.
So it's pretty transactional. I did do it a little bit, but people get jobs and they're like, I'm good. I've got the money now. And I'm like, okay, well, you'll probably come back to me later. But it no longer energized me. And in a coaching conversation I had a little less than a year ago with my coach at the time, I just was not feeling fulfilled. And so I worked on an exit strategy to get my personal business to the point where I could sustain myself without the income that I had. It was a part-time coaching job.
Yeah.
And once I got there, it was in February of this year, I just quit. And so I've been out on my own coaching business since February. That was February 18th or something like that, middle of February.
And you've been boots running ever since.
What's that?
Boots running, like fulfilled and just.
I've had a lot of free time, man. I really enjoy the flexibility coaching affords me.
Yeah.
I have a lot of free time. So like 2 to 4 coaching sessions a day. I mean, that's half a work day. You know. So I usually don't coach past 3 p.m. My first coaching session is usually 9 or 10.
Yeah.
I take Fridays off.
So you've kind of built your ideal life, or your ideal schedule in that sense.
I mean, I could coach more.
But you like your lifestyle.
Yeah. And enough people know about me that it's getting to a point now where people reach out to me to schedule, again, not free coaching sessions, but I like to have sort of a first conversation with people so they get a feel for, like, just the beginning of our conversation, where they learn that maybe what they think coaching is not what I plan to provide them.
Yeah.
And if they're open to that and they would allow themselves to be challenged and do the work, then let's move to a coaching session from there. But yeah, it's a good place to be. I think I could always be busier, but I am so happy. I have so much energy now. Like I play basketball a couple days a week.
Nice.
Like I go for runs a couple days a week during the day. You know, I was playing Nintendo this morning before we came over here. Like, I'm almost like, I feel a little guilty admitting it, but
no, not at all.
It's well, guilty is a judgment compared to the way I previously thought I had to enjoy my life.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's like, it's good. Like the bills are paid, money in the bank. You know, I already told you we got the house, I got the new car, like all this stuff. And once I got all that, it was like, how can I access more joy, more fun, and have more energy? And I realized it wasn't 10 coaching conversations a day. It was maybe 4. You know, I was at one point coaching 10 people a day, and it just, holy crap, man.
Brutal.
You show up to that like 6th call, and you're not even like there for them. And it just didn't feel good.
Okay.
So, yeah, 4 a day is kind of my sweet spot now. I feel like if I'm low on energy or I'm a little tired, like a coaching conversation energizes me so I can kind of fill the gap. But if I'm dipping below 75%, you know, I'm just not feeling, I'll just reschedule a coaching conversation.
Okay,
because
perfect.
If I'm not in a position to listen, you know, it's hard stuff that people talk about. They talk about family, and they talk about finances, and they talk about intimacies, and they talk about goals and work and relationships. It's like, you know, if you can't show up ready to walk them through that conversation that's going to lead to that insight, you know.
Does that give you gratitude? Like hearing all these people's, I'm lack of saying problems or obstacles. It's like, you're like, wow, this world, like, there's so many people who need help.
Well, as you
like my life
probably
is
realized, I see things a little differently than most. Well, probably even than I used to. And gratitude for me is, I'm actually the most grateful, I don't know if I'd call it gratitude, but like the most joy that I feel in a coaching conversation is when that like insight hits. You know, they get quiet and then they admit this thing that they hadn't admitted to themselves maybe in a while. And then when you ask them what's next for them, and they immediately have an answer for what they're going to do next, that the whole reason they showed up to the coaching call was maybe because they're having trouble figuring out what that was.
Yeah.
When that happens, I just like a Christmas tree, like a light bulb, man. I have to like literally walk out of my office and like shake it out. Like it's just the best feeling ever.
Wow. Well, thank you. That's like, yeah, that's, you definitely changed some paradigms in my mind about life coaching. And because before that, I just never would have, you know, thought about, okay, yeah, it's really it's not biased. It's just like you're letting the person realize, and you say like they have the answers within them already. And that statement somewhat resonates with me. I just can't, I don't understand, but I do. I would say I agree with that. Like, yeah, most people do have the answers already.
Yeah. How many times in your life have you known, but you're having trouble articulating it, you're having trouble really putting your finger on it, but you know, I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't do that. I should do that. Mm-hmm. I should say that. Why didn't I say it? You know, we know, man. It takes an expert coach, a professional, to help you navigate that. I just had a thought, if I could share.
Oh, please.
We're incredibly biased, all of us. We're incredibly biased towards our thoughts, our feelings, and our experiences. And we should be. They're ours. But we will do things that don't serve us well just for the sake of staying in that comfort zone of what we know.
Yeah.
You need help getting out of there. You aren't going to do it alone. You will always go back to the bias towards you, yourself, and your experiences. And so, yeah, the quote, on Instagram can pull you out of that for a second, but then you go right back
to your habits.
Yeah, you're going to go right back to that. So, of course, bias has lots of interpretations, but I'm referring to our tendency to believe everything we have ever thought, felt, and experienced as the truth.
Have you ever been coaching somebody and you figure like, man, this person has substance abuse. This is not the realm that I need to be in. Like, hey, you need to quit drinking and you need to see AA or something like that. Yeah,
well, or other things, or depression, or dark ideations. You know, like if I get wind that somebody is doing something very harmful to themselves or others, I have the ICF is essentially the governing body for professional coaches once you are an ICF credentialed coach.
Okay.
So I am ethically bound to address that in the moment, and especially if it's not for me to handle, and say, this is where I call the authorities. This is where I give you information on a helpline. This is where I refer you to a therapist. Like, if this is beyond the scope of what I'm trained to help.
Okay.
Yeah. Stuff comes up. I mean,
you're opening up a closet and you don't even know how deep that closet is.
Well, and that thing that you've known that you've never been able to name, and all of a sudden you can name it. Yeah, it could get scary for some people. Like, they just, maybe they get real angry once they get there, and they're like, I don't want to look at that thing. And maybe there's a trauma in there, and I'm not qualified to process trauma, but I could help people understand if they're carrying some trauma, but I'm not qualified to help them process it. And so, there are instances where you have to realize, like, I'm totally out of my depth.
Hey, but if someone goes to you and then they realize there's a trauma that they've been suppressing and they get help and they end up doing better, you've done your job.
Yeah,
right?
and I have had people who I've had to refer to therapists. Some of my best friends are therapists. Ultimately, talk about that healthy detachment. I want you to figure out who you are and be that best version of you. And oftentimes who we are is who we've always been. We've just been convinced we have to be somebody else. So when we finally realize that, that's a heavy load, man.
But a lot of people get their purpose from chasing that carrot.
Absolutely.
So you're telling them the carrot's always been...
Were we told does society tell us otherwise? Society doesn't tell us, be you. You've always been whole. You're not broken. No, everything tells us we need fixing.
Yeah.
We don't need fixing. We need
that's funny because there's that millennial type of thing. Like, oh, the millennials, they were given a trophy award for everything.
Yeah, who raised them?
Yeah.
Gen X and boomers raised us. So it all goes downhill, man. Not downhill like a bad thing, but it all trickles down. Kids are born perfect. And then us adults, we screw them up. And then we spend the rest of our lives looking for the answers that were there all along.
Wow. I have 2 young ones. We're segueing to kids.
I know.
I'm going to ask.
We don't need to go there.
No. What are some ways that you, maybe in your just opinion, of how we screw that up?
Well, don't touch that. Put that down.
Yeah.
Don't run. Get over here. Stop crying. Toughen up. Suck it up. Just do it. Right? We have these...
Ouch.
We have these...
Adrian, you sound like me.
There's a word I heard...
oh, man.
There's a word I heard, and it's not coming to mind. But
the world is fear. It's so dangerous out there. If I don't tell my kid not to run or not,
That's about you, man. That's not about your kid.
Ouch.
Yeah, there's a quote that I think of that is, what I say is about me and what you hear is about you.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So flip it.
Yeah.
What you say is about you. What I hear is about me. Point is, we're always projecting ourselves onto our world. So little kids, case in point, and all my, like you and Phil and others, all all my friends have kids 2 years to 15 years old now.
Yeah.
And even my nieces and nephews, I see the way, my family interacts with my extended family and their kids. It's what we were taught, man. Would you blame us for raising our kids any other way?
Well, I turned out okay.
Yeah. There was this meme that I saw, and it said, somebody told me that, don't worry, kids are resilient. Then why do all of us adults need therapists?
That's absolutely true.
Oh, they'll get over it. They're tough. He's a tough kid. So I caution telling people any parental advice because, the don't tell me how to raise my kids, right? Mm-hmm. Every parent feels that way. But then who looks out for the kids?
Yeah.
Teachers.
Well, every child's unique.
Yeah. So what I would say is there's nothing soft about offering your kids a safe space. Suffer with your kids. If they're having a hard time, don't fix them. Cry it out. Let's talk about why you got upset. And let's figure out the next time this particular instance happens, what's the next path forward? And it's hard for parents to watch their kids struggle.
Yeah. Well, I think when you just said cry with your kids, that kind of hit me a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's like, stop crying. Why are you crying?
Yeah.
I'm not being empathetic, to Julia or anything like that.
And what happens is, this word safe space gets thrown around like it's just for snowflakes or whatever, like softies.
I agree, yeah.
I totally get it, because I grew up in a small town and big family, and you didn't have time to sort out all 5 kids. You could tell them to shut up, though, or go to their room. And so I've got my own stuff that I can reconcile with the tools coaching has given me. But kids are a product of their environment. I'm a product of my environment as an adult. But in your formidable adolescent years, typically 8 to 13, that's when that stuff sets in, and you will spend the whole rest of your life trying to address it. So if your kids are young, which they are, you got a lot of room to work with them, so there's still plenty of hope there. And even for parents who do have, adolescent and teens, address what's going on with you. Your kids will see that. They'll be interested to see that different version of you, and that'll start a conversation. But ultimately it's up to parents and adults to raise well-adjusted kids by being an example of a well-adjusted adult.
Yeah, most of them might.
And not expecting they just grow out of it. They'll just grow out of it. Ask any adult who's struggling with something. Did you grow out of it? That thing that triggers you, that gets you angry, that brings you to tears quite easily, that upsets you. Did you grow out of it? You didn't. The same things that, I have like the biggest FOMO of anybody, I think. If I feel like I'm missing out or I got left out of something, it absolutely terrifies and enrages me.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Like, I have to be included. I still, to this day, struggle with that. Single mother raising 5 kids. My father was in my life until he passed. But, like, you're just screaming for attention among 5 kids. You just want people to pay attention to you. You can't give all 5 kids 100% of your attention.
Yeah.
You can't. So, it's what I struggle with there also helps me recognize when I see it in others. It helps me be more empathetic to others who struggle with that type of stuff. And I realize that, I do get angry. But I know how to manage it. I know when it pops up, what to do with it. And it doesn't have to be something that causes me to do and say kind of crappy things, horrible things. Like, I got a sharp tongue. I could use it if I want to, but I don't anymore. But I know where the source of it came from.
Wow. No, you're absolutely right. When you touched the basis about, like, most of the things I learned from my dad, when he was alive was like when I was watching him more than him when he was yelling me or even saying anything. I think it ties back to your quote you mentioned. But yeah, that definitely gives me a different perspective of like creating a safe space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my dad was a good man, but I do remember he would go, like into your dad, my dad was much older, so, you know, he was 68 when he passed away, and that was 20 plus years ago. So he was 52 when I was born. So when I was a young kid, I was hanging around with a bunch of old guys who worked on cars, you know, who worked in machine shops, who were ex-fishermen. My dad was a commercial fisherman. And so I just saw these guys who worked really hard, had very foul mouths, very foul senses of almost perverse senses of humor. And that's what I observed. I became a foul-mouthed, kind of really dirty-mouthed, questionable sense of humor kid.
Okay.
That's all that I saw. You know, but also my dad he would enjoy just working on his car or just being around those old guys at a coffee shop.
Yeah.
And I also got used to just enjoying kind of not really doing much.
Yeah.
Like I got used to doing, like just sitting around and reading the newspaper. My dad could do that for hours, cover to cover. He could talk with his friends about all sorts of stuff that I cared nothing about as a kid for hours and hours. I could sit down and talk with friends for hours and hours. You know, I could sit down and focus on one thing right in front of me to the exclusion of focusing on all other things with like no issue.
So you got that from your father, I'm hearing, but it wasn't a genetic trait that was passed down?
I don't think so. No. I mean, there's some ADD and ADHD in our family. I do have a little bit of that, but like once I settle in and focus on something, I tell my wife all the time, I don't multitask. I'm a terrible, like, I think the concept is ridiculous to begin with, but I will focus on something until it loses my attention, and then I will go all in on the next thing.
Adrian.
But I won't have my attention on like
you just opened up a can of worms, and why do you think multitasking is ridiculous? And the reason I ask is me and my wife have a little argument about this.
Oh, I'm sure.
She doesn't believe in multitasking, and I do. And I go, oh, I tell you, all you do is cook. You know, you cook this and you're focused on this. Well, when I cook, I'm washing the dishes. Right. Yeah. I'm doing I'm doing this. Look at all the stuff I got done. And she's like, well, then you just got to. It's like she doesn't believe in the word multitask. So, and I think
I would put it back on you. And you're probably going to give me one of these blank stares.
Okay. I'm ready for the blank stare.
So let's examine this from a position of neutrality, right? There's no good, no bad. It just depends. How does that serve you, the multitasking?
It makes me feel like a boss when I do
it. You know, I think that's another thing is we're always going to recommend that our way be the right way, and that's because it's a place of comfort for us. So to see somebody not doing something that's comfortable for us makes us uncomfortable. So my wife is the multitasker.
Okay.
And I'm the one who could sit there and read a book for hours. Like I could have many things sort of in the works, but only focused on that one thing, and then that closes, and then I go to the next thing. So you call it multitasking if you want, but I only focus on one thing at a time. But like I'll get through a quarter of a book, and if it's not doing anything for me, I'll just close it and move on to the next thing. But that serves me well. And we actually got into an argument a couple weeks ago over this because she's like, well, maybe you should write a list of all the things you need to do today and then get through that list today. And I'm like, I am not going to do that.
Wow, your wife sounds like me.
I'm like, Emily, if that would only drive me crazy and make you feel a little more comfortable, then that's something you need to support with, not me.
Yeah, no. And what's my deal trying to change my wife?
Yeah.
Why am I so hell-bent at making her as efficient or boss,
There's a reason you didn't marry someone exactly like you, right?
That's
Focus
true.
on that.
Yeah.
Focus on that reason.
Gosh.
My wife and I are total opposites. Introvert, extrovert. Like, I love sports. She hates sports. Like, I love video games. She can't stand them. She works very hard. I work just enough.
Yeah.
Like, we are so different in these ways, but we love each other because when those things come up, this is where the coaching has helped our relationship. When those things come up, like, all right, what is it? Let's talk about it. Let's put it on the table. And we work through it, you know, so there's no putting stuff off anymore. So I'm very grateful that coaching has helped me communicate better just generally without having her feel like I'm coaching her like sneakily.
Oh, so you when you notice something, you hit it like right away.
Yeah, we just address it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a quote with like conflict deferred is conflict multiplied.
Yeah. Bad news doesn't get better with age.
Yeah. Okay.
It doesn't age well. So yeah, that's one thing that she's gotten very courageous around, is like, you know, she's more concerned for the welfare of others sometimes than I am.
Yeah.
I don't give a lot of F's. So when we sit down for something, I'll say whatever sometimes without thinking how she'll respond. But I also do that in my coaching. Like, I throw an idea out there just to see if it will spark something within you. And if it doesn't, no big deal. Mm-hmm. And so I'll just say something trying to get the conversation going, and maybe she's just not ready for it. You know, I'm like, but I want to address this right now. So I have to recognize too that maybe she needs more space around these hard conversations than I do.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go, baby. Let's get this done. You know,
let's hash this out.
Yeah, let's get it done. But I really do think that, you know, the opposites attract thing. Mm-hmm. I think we would drive ourselves crazy if our partner was exactly like us.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Business partner, colleagues, or otherwise, you know.
It's funny, yeah. Most of everybody in my business circle is exact opposites, right?
Good.
We all are specialized, but we all move, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's great to have sort of your board of governors, your board of advisors who help pull you out of that comfort zone, that place you typically go.
Yeah.
Or you're looking at it the wrong way, man. You know, examine it this way. Like, now you're going to go back to seeing it your way, but you're going to, you know, work together to move forward from a different perspective. But yeah, I think, I like to challenge myself. So, you know, I'm kind of a glutton for punishment. So I have all sorts of things in my life that just continue to keep me out of my comfort zone.
Yeah. Is that the point of life, to get out of your comfort zone? Or
I think that's a great way to look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they say life is suffering, right? So it's kind of like entitled with like getting out of your comfort zone. Like
you're gonna.
Do you have to come to a realization that like you're never going to be comfortable and you're always going to be evolving, or what?
I think that of course I want to come up with the perfect quote or something, but
that's okay.
I think I don't know if life is suffering, but life is a challenge, and do that challenging thing for the sake of growth.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the way I look at it. Do that challenging thing. This is not comfortable for me, at all. This whole set. So, like, I'm a little sweaty.
Yeah, it's okay.
The back of my chair, a little sweaty. But like, when you reached out to me, I stopped doing podcasts and live stuff. So, all my business is pretty organic. Like, you tell somebody, they told somebody, or they call me, or whatever. So, putting myself out there, I haven't done this in probably a year. I used to do live broadcasts on Facebook and LinkedIn every week for like at least 6 months last year, and then I just stopped.
Yeah.
I don't know, something about it. So this is uncomfortable for me, and that's exactly why I'm here. Well,
I appreciate you coming in, and I care about our subscribers, and I know that some of them can use your help and your guidance. It means the world, and hopefully everybody at home can click on the link below and look Adrian up and give him a call, message, text him, DM.
Yeah.
Is there anything last things you want to say before we end the recording?
I was thinking about this on the way over. So I thought I'm going to say things that I believe or that I have a position or a stance on based on my experience. And there will be people who watch this on Facebook or share it on, on YouTube or wherever.
Yeah.
And they don't see it that way. And I was thinking on the drive over, good.
Yeah. I think it's going to be quite opposite. I think most people are going to be cheering you on.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, not complete disagreement or like I upset anybody, because that's never my intention. But, just as we talked, there are some things that run counter to how maybe you've seen things and how I have seen things. Let's examine more of those things.
Yeah.
Because that's where we grow. We don't grow from a place of comfort.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's one thing I wanted to share is like, you may not see it my way, or your perspective maybe just didn't resonate with somebody. Good. You surround yourself with more people, more information that runs counter to the way you've typically seen things.
The world would be a lot better place if that was the case.
Yeah, put your curiosity cap on. Ask yourself, why is that? What's coming up for me? Like, why is that triggering me to feel a certain way? Why did that anger me? Ask yourself more curious questions and maybe less finger pointing and less judgmental, comments or thoughts. But I'll also say that self-judgments are the strongest form of judgments. So we project our judgments onto other people. So if anybody watches or listens to this and they do disagree with something, it's actually saying more about them than it is what anything you and I have said or done.
Yeah. Well, I'll let that thing sink in with the listeners. Thank you, Adrian, for coming on. I appreciate it.
Man. You bet.
All right. Thank you.
Happy to be here.